I'm Richard Reinsch. I'm the director of the Simon Center for American Studies at the Heritage Foundation. I write for Law and Liberty frequently and many other publications in the United States.
Los biólogos más avispados detallan un crecimiento inusual en el número de avestruces. Sus rutas migratorias parecen haber evolucionado, lejos de los tigres y baobabs de la sabana africana. Hoy se avistan avestruces en el bar de la esquina, en el Congreso de los Diputados o incluso haciendo cola en misa. Eso sí, todos comparten una misma característica. Ante el conflicto, esconden la cabeza bajo tierra.
We have to immediately escalate every situation to the highest possible level of conflict.
Los científicos llaman a este fenómeno el efecto avestruz. ¿Tiene solución? Nuestra propuesta: sacar la cabeza del suelo, llamar a los expertos y responder de cara a los debates que se nos plantean como sociedad, sean sobre la vida y la muerte, el sexo de los ángeles o la mejor manera de cocinar un chuletón. ¿Te sumas?
To answer the question of what does it mean to be a conservative, I don't think there's a general answer to that question. I think it is really specific to your country and to the history and constitution and institutions of your country. And I think the question you have to ask yourself is, within that political, social framework, what am I trying to conserve? For the American conservative, I think the answer is the Declaration of Independence and the United States Constitution and the central ideas that animate those documents. So for the Declaration, it is the individual's equality under law, because human beings by nature are equal to one another as created by God. And also within that framework that we are self-governing. That is to say, we as beings of language, reason, and consent should govern one another. We should accept other people's ideas and also offer our own in framework of the rule of law and limited government. And our Constitution builds on that. So American conservatives are trying to preserve a Constitution that divides power between the national government and local governments and state governments, and that also separates power. And that builds on the idea also that politics is one part of life, but it's not the most important part of life, nor should it be ideological and define what it means to be a citizen. We are engaged in politics, but we're also in our families, we're in our churches, we're workers, we're investors, we're volunteers. That's a huge part of American life, is actually offering yourself as a volunteer and being engaged in your community and in your society. So we're trying to protect all of those good things against a progressive left that largely wants to use the government to make us equal in every respect, that wants to use the government, constantly grow its strength and power. Big objective now is the abolition of nature and trying to use the government to break down any embodied understanding of the human person, and also using the government in a very aggressive way with regard to environmental, climate change legislation, and change the way Americans live and act by making energy much more expensive and sort of breaking down our economy that way.
¿Tú cuántos años tienes? 32. ¿Y cuánto dinero tienes? Eso.
Well, I want to. I'll be a bit humble in my answer to that question, because I don't want to presume to speak for the Spanish government or for Spanish conservatives. I think one of the things that we have learned as conservatives in America is identity politics is an act of unreason. It's an act of will. It's something that comes about when discourse overall has broken down and people no longer think that human beings are made to know truth and to live freedom responsibly and to live freedom virtuously. It's all just whatever you want to do. And so these deep questions, how should I use my freedom? What am I free to do? Are seen as sort of impossible to answer. And I think the left has come in and has said to people, well, what we can do, what we actually should do, is make everyone equal, make sure that everyone's lifestyle is enforced by the government and that they're protected. And what that tends to rule out is many Americans who share sort of the old faith and share a belief in religion, and that human beings actually know how they're supposed to live, and that it's actually in our nature, and we know how we should act, and we know the choices that we should make. They tend to be the people who are ground down by this new progressive left. And so I think we have found that one of the things that, they're trying to erase our past. They're trying to exclude certain people from the public square, and they're doing that by saying that the past of your country is racist or bigoted homophobic, all these sorts of things. And it's not true. And to the extent that it is true, there are things that Americans have tried to do to overcome that past, particularly with regard to slavery, that are praiseworthy. And so you have to realize they're using this as a weapon against you. And so one thing is stop apologizing and don't accept their accusations up front, but speak well about who you are, about your past, and the ways in which, you as a country, you're a good country.
Le pidió al rey de España que ofreciera una disculpa, por lo que hicieron.
Number one, and I think you see this in Spain, is the attempt to sort of disabuse normal people, ordinary people of patriotism, and a patriotism rooted in the past and love of country. Why? Because they want to create a different country and a new place that people live in. And so they want to get rid of the old values, the old history, and they want to sort of consign it to a horrible place. And that's true in America as well. I think the way in which Christianity relates to citizenship is interesting. Christianity, at one level, reduces the significance of government. It's not the single most important thing of your life, because your soul has a higher destination than government, has the destination of eternal life. But that doesn't mean that government doesn't matter, and it doesn't mean that our lives here on earth don't matter. I think it actually helps us be better citizens. It helps us be better citizens because we know that the enduring worth and equality of human beings, and we know that our actions here matter because they participate in something, they participate in God's divine order, and so we're called to live virtuously. And we're also called to give an account of why we want to do things, to be honest, to be humble, to be courageous. And this inherently makes people good citizens, I think. And it means that we value tremendously our lives here on earth and our relationships and what government does, which is to protect the dignity of the human person and allow us to construct a life in common together. I think it's those like the Marxists and the progressives who are largely atheists, who want to perfect life on earth and use the government to perfect life on earth, who end up making this place a hell on earth or very difficult to live in, precisely because they can only see one thing they want to accomplish, like equality, and are willing to tear down things that stand in the way, including, say, the church. Religious freedom in America, in one regard, has received tremendous protection in our Constitution, and that's been recognized more so recently by the United States Supreme Court. But now there's another part of this, which is the attempt to relegate religion to the private sphere and to something inconsequential because of the LGBTQ movement, which sees Christianity as intrinsically bigoted, and pretty much any significant religious faith. So Orthodox Judaism, Islam, that's just the way you should think about those religions, and not as if these are people who understand it differently than you, who think differently than you, and could we not have space in some way for all?
I take the cash and I take the respect. To some people, that's more important.
And so if you can rule out religious people, you can start to construct this new person that they want to construct, who thinks, if my will tells me I'm a woman, even though biologically I'm a man, I should be allowed to pursue that. And so religion stands in their way, and so we see ongoing attempts to sort of exclude it. I think to stand against it is to acknowledge that the soul of the human person, that we are made to know the truth, and that the truth exists, and that this world is one of order, it's one of purpose, and it's one that points to eternal life, points to God, and that our deepest questions point us in that direction too. And it's enough to recognize that the human soul is, its deepest question is really the question of God and the question of that divine meaning. And, if we say those things don't matter, or that they're just purely relativistic, you give my answer, you give your answer, I give my answer, it doesn't really matter, then we start to, take what really matters to human beings and sort of trample it afoot. And I think where people go with that is they start to search for meaning in new ways, and for meaning in a way that's directed against how we were created to be. And I think, so our Western inheritance is a very good one. It's Jerusalem and it's Athens, and it's reason, asking questions. How should I live? What can I hope for? What is the truth? What's evil? What's good? And finding answers in sort of the revelation that was received in the Bible and from the apostles, and that this is actually the best way of responding to the questions reason asks. And so we need reason and revelation. That's our Western tradition. And we should build on those things, and we should try to reinstill it. But what it also means is, there isn't a final point of history like communism or fascism or even a progressive equality that's going to finally make us happy. And when we try to achieve those things, what we end up doing is destroying human persons and human community to reach that end state, and that's supreme injustice. So we find ways to act with love and with reason and with courage when we understand the reasons why we were created.